They were all teachers, all
All
of them.
right.
And Barbara Sizemore, the
Right.
superintendent from Washington, that's his cousin.
Absolutely.
That's his cousin by
I
marriage.
didn't know that. Okay. No,
My father's mother is a Sizemore.
I know her very well. Yeah,
That's
Debbie.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. Stand
Okay.
by, everybody. We're coming up, and
Hmm.
here we are. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you always. I want you to meet me on Blue Sky, Santita Jackson. .bsky.social. That's right, at Santita J. I'm still on X and am950radio.com. You can listen to us from 6 to 8 every morning. The Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. Everybody, that's the only page where you can get friends. Please go there. The other page is a landing page, and you all continue, bless your hearts, to request a friendship, but they keep kicking people off because they have a limit, they have a cutoff. And
Hmm.
so they continue to cut you off, but they won't cut you off on Santita Jackson and Friends. So please go there. And
Hmm.
of course, on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, which is where we are right now. Hey, Bernadette, you got over here real fast, girl. All right. Love that. I love it. I love it. And thank you so much. Like and share, everybody. I need you to subscribe, like, and share. Subscribe, like, and share. And please like the show because it helps us with the algorithm. We're going back in shows and we're seeing that sometimes we've had more than 2 million views. But
Mm.
we need you to do that in real time because you all keep sharing the show. And by the time we have these, and we've even had more than that. So, but if you could just help us out and like the show, like and share the show, like and share the show. You know what? I came across some information that broke my heart because probably aside from music, the most profound joy in my life I get from reading. I love it.
Mm. Mm.
And for me growing up, reading was a refuge, not an escape as much as it was a refuge. It allowed
Mm.
me to transported me to other places. It opened up my mind. And I thank God
Mm.
that my parents gave me the space to read. And when the Chicago Public Library would sell their books downtown, my mother would put my baby brother and then my baby sister in the stroller, and she'd take all five of us and other kids down there, and I could buy all the books I wanted. And oh, I would come home with bags and bags of books, and I thank God for that. My brother thought I was a little crazy, but my parents were like, "Hey, we love that you want to read." And so to think that at least 48 million Americans don't have the ability to do that.
Mm.
Not the ability, they don't have the learning because they're
Mm.
able, and many of them, and even if they have learning challenges, if they get the proper instruction, so many different worlds are open to them. 48 million Americans at the very least cannot read at the third grade level.
Mm.
What can you do? Talk about shutting down your life's options. It's so unfair. How did we get here? We talk about being rich. You cannot be of the richest nation on earth and deny education to so many people. There are a couple of landmark cases in Detroit, one that we're hearing now about in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
These kids have gone to school having graduated salutatorians, valedictorians of their classes. And they got to college and they found out that they were illiterate.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine how devastating that has been for these young people? They have already proved by their work habits, by their standing in their classes, that they were willing to work hard. But I also think about the kids who were at the back of the class, who were working hard but who didn't get the instruction. Oh, Lavonia Perryman, brilliant journalist, award winning journalist, radio, television, also political operative. For years, you've also been a teacher. I want us to pivot to someone who's been a teacher, a principal, a deputy superintendent, a superintendent, She is an author. You got to get your book out, Livonia, because you got a whole lot of experiences that you need to share with people. Not that many people have had the kind of experiences that you've had, and you've crossed a lot of terrain. So I'm going to be on you about that. But is anyone here? Can anyone teach me how to read? That's your book. I mean, is there anybody here? I mean, somebody, somebody. And we need to talk about that, everybody, because this is not right. You cannot continue to have a free society. Well, continue. You cannot have a free society if people cannot read. Can't. So that ought to concern you. That ought to concern you. And so so I've been doing some reading about this Dr. Whitaker. They were talking about how they have stopped teaching people to read phonetically. And I learned in the phonetic code, where you broke down a word, and it helps you to become a great speller, which I am. And it helps you to understand other languages, which I sing in. And I read a couple of other languages because I learned my native language. Um, Help me to understand how it is in we say that we're number one. It's a mantra in the United States. And we are the most advanced, and that is not true. When you go to other countries, you will be shocked at the development that you see in other countries. But they also value education in ways that we do not. Well, let me say this. We don't want to educate the masses. We educate the classes.
Mm.
Yeah, we do. Because during
Mm.
during COVID, I saw my nieces and nephews who were in prep school. They didn't miss a beat, kept on going. And one of them was boarding, and she stayed in until May. Then they sent her home. But they were ready to pivot right into a pandemic.
Mm.
Okay,
Mm.
but our children were locked out, and if they did not have connection to the internet or a computer, as Dr. Whitaker, I need you to share what you have seen in wealthy districts.
Mm.
I even saw a picture of a little white boy sitting outside of his school in the cold. Oh, it could make me cry thinking about that now. With a little computer because he didn't have internet at home. But he was determined to, as my great grandmother used to say, to get his learning.
Mm.
How is it that almost 50 million people, and those are people at the third grade level. When I started at Fox, they said, okay, you need to speak to people at the sixth grade level. I was like, what? I said, yeah,
Mm.
you'd be surprised. I'm like, now how could we be number one? How can we be the superpower with people who are not able to really read? Dr. Whitaker, I've said enough. I'm so astonished. As soon as I saw it, I called you. I mean, and I sent you a text. You're like,
You
please text
did.
me. And I said,
You
then I
did.
reached out to you, Livonia.
You
So I
sure
said,
did.
okay, you've been a teacher, but you're a
Yeah.
communicator, and you understand. While we're talking about all these other things, including the personality of the president, we don't even talk about his policies. We talk about his personality. I'm talking about reading.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We can't
Mm-hmm.
read in the United States, and that goes across all color lines. We can't read. And you're talking about defunding education. But what are you going to put in its place? How did we get here to 48 million people at the very least who can't read? Dr. Whitaker, are you surprised by
So,
those figures?
well, no,
Oh, God.
but I want to tell you that I have another way of looking at this, and what I mean by that is when, first of all, the statistics are alarming. I think that the first thing that I think about when I hear, statements like what is true, so many people aren't reading, the first thing that comes to my mind is indicated on what assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's to me a big conversation regarding how are we determining students, in many cases, adults' proficiency level? What tool, what standard of measurement are we using? I would suggest at the adult level, perhaps for the purpose of this conversation, it's safe to say that if a grown up is applying for a job and they can't read the application, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would venture to say if a company could produce numbers in terms of how much money they are spending to educate their new or their employees who can't read the manuals associated with their jobs, I think it's fair to say that there's a literacy crisis in those instances. With regards to how students are doing in school and their ability to demonstrate their proficiency in the area of reading, that's where it gets a little tricky for me. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to tell you why. Because, this is funny, because I, when I look at students' assessments, first of all, it's important to know that even in the state of Illinois, there are conversations today being had about the need to change the state assessment. Heavy loaded, because literally I have been and am on state level committees that have determined that the assessments that we use in far too many instances is actually not giving us an accurate read on what students know and are able to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you take, and I know this is national, perhaps even international, but if you take the state of Illinois alone and look at the assessments that we've used that have been issued by the state, that then students have to take those tests, those assessments in the individual school districts in the state of Illinois alone, I am going to tell you, in the last 10 plus years, we have changed state assessments 3, if not 4 times. Because what we are learning is it doesn't give us an accurate read. That's a problem. Like literally, the state of Illinois is looking to get input from educators across the entire state about what types of assessments we should be using. Let me drive that a little bit closer to home.
Mm-hmm.
Far too often, the state exams are not tied to what is actually being taught in the classroom. We're adults. Can you recall how I know I can recall 100 times as a school age child, I was given a state exam and I'm thinking, my teacher didn't teach me any of this. I mean, like you're talking not only to a leader, but I'm talking about somebody who's been in the field where I know for a fact that what the research says and what now many states across the United States state school officials are saying, we need to look more at the assessments that are tied to the curriculum. So there's the state exams that measure across the board, but many school districts use different curriculums that members of the community and or the educators and or members of the community have determined that this is the curriculum that best aligns with what the state says our students should know and be able to do as they matriculate from one grade level to the next. And yet the assessments that are in those curriculum give us a more accurate read on our students' proficiency levels than the state exams that are used to make the determination as to whether or not children are literate.
But I can
I've
tell.
said a lot, but that's heavy.
No, no, no. You said a whole lot because I don't see you at the table formulating policy.
Oh
Really.
my
Mm.
God, I need
No,
to be.
no, no,
Oh,
no,
you're
no, no,
right.
no,
You're
no, no. I
right.
mean,
You're
I know.
right.
I
You're
hear
right.
this.
You're right.
No, it's what's frustrating. When I talk to
No,
Dr.
you're
Matt
right.
Wolf and
You're
Dr.
right.
Julian Malveaux, brilliant economists, I'm like, yeah, yeah, you're right, but you're not at the White House Economic Council.
You're right.
I'm tired of the Keynesian economists sitting at the White House Economic Council.
You're right.
I need someone who understands not these suites, but these streets.
Yeah.
I need someone who can understand kids who are in IEP, special needs. I
Mhm.
mean, because generally kids who have the children who are on the spectrum are generally brilliant.
Mhm.
Intellectually, they're brilliant kids. I mean, that's like a sign of brilliance is having some being
Mhm.
bipolar, being on
Mhm.
the spectrum. They're
Mm-hmm.
special. I mean, there's a very thin line between genius and they flirt with their sanity. That's just the reality of it. And I don't see you there. And poverty.
You're right.
Poverty is a huge determinant.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, so I'm saying, wait a minute. See, and so American society is not collapsed; it's being collapsed
Mm-hmm.
because of the things that we're
Mm-hmm.
not putting in. And I don't see. Okay, you got a department of it. You have someone who has a department of education as she's supposed to be deconstructing it. Well,
Mm-hmm.
what are you going to put in its place? What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand this. I mean, but the
And
message,
Santita, can
please.
I add value real quick? I remember taking over a superintendent in the South Suburban School Districts, and the reason why I
No,
started to
but let
focus.
people know what the South
Oh,
suburbs in
South
Illinois.
Suburbs is actually 30 miles outside of the city of Chicago. It is the area in our state that serves the greatest number of African American students. 90% qualify for free and reduced lunch.
Mm.
90% African American, but very, very, very rich in terms of their intellectual potential. But where I was going with this is when I walked and did my walk to the through the schools after looking at the dismal test results. After several days in the school, I said to the staff, your students, our students know more than we think they know. What I studied, read, and was published in the newspaper about how students are faring on the standardized tests is not an accurate read on what I saw these Black children doing, engaged in STEM, engaged in activities where they were able to articulate their thinking at extremely high levels. See, some of the standardized test does not measure a student's
Hmm.
ability to articulate what they're thinking orally. I saw students that were creative and inclined to be exceptional in the music and the arts, and that's not measured on standardized
Yeah,
tests.
and they're pulling that out of schools. Music is nothing but oral math. When you excel in music, you
Mm-hmm.
excel in math. That's because that's everything is
Nice,
mathematical music.
nice.
So but I mean, the person who, I mean, it was Michelangelo and Da Vinci who helped us to understand the human body.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how we, but it's like we're draining the system. I mean, you're right, because it's not just looking at reading and writing, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
looking
Mm-hmm.
at different kinds of intelligence, even those who are vocationally brilliant. We, there's no respect for any of that. I promise you, Livonia.
Correct.
I'm going. I mean, I'm just. I don't know how America is going to. I don't know how America is going to progress if we don't want to progress people. I just see such Dr. Whitaker. I just see such disregard for people. It breaks my heart. And I see so many of these young people and a lot of older people whose dreams were deferred. Thank you, Lorraine Hansberry.
Mm-hmm.
People who did not get the opportunity to develop. I'm going to wait for
That's right.
Dr. Whitaker to get back,
Oh,
but
sorry. There we
no,
go.
no, that's all right. That's
There we
okay.
go.
It just breaks my heart. I don't know. It breaks my heart. It really does.
It breaks my heart also, if I may
No,
share that
please.
with you. But this, to me, it is a cultural part of the discussion should be about the culture that we're involved, the country, welcome to America that we're involved, about the
Mhm.
finances and the poverty, the income level, the class discussion. All of that plays into our educational system and how America values education. They value education, but the education is valued within pockets of our culture, pockets of our class, pockets of who is in charge and where the money flows. My mother always says, follow the money.
Mm.
So
Mm,
once again, as you know, Dr. Whitaker, if you are in West Bloomfield in Detroit, Michigan, or in the hills of California, or the throes of the riversides in Chicago, and where the schools look like campuses, and they call them just that. That's not a system that money is flowing for the students, and you can actually see it. $5,000 per student in certain school systems, as Dr. Whitaker will know, where in another particular area, same city, 10 blocks away, $1,000 put aside per student. So how many books can you buy with 1,000, and how many people can you teach and buy at 5,000? It's a dollar discussion also. It's a poverty discussion. And then guess what? It's a strategy where there are certain people, I believe, this is my opinion, that really recognize that they may not want my children to read because it is a system that holds you back, that puts me in another category, that we're not able to compete with the people that they want to be in place, who are in charge, who are in the White House. So I don't get the opportunity. When you have in Michigan, just so everyone know, in Michigan, we have a test, as I've shared with you. And third grade, everybody studied this group, and everybody takes the test. And it's pipeline to the prisons or pipeline to Howard University. I'm gonna just use that as an example. And they actually put money into the system based on the number, the matrix number that Dr. Whitaker is talking about. How well did that school, this is not just Michigan, how well did that school do in terms of the numbers? Then another thing, just think about this. Do you know that there's what they call a school day? And that's the day they count the number of students that show up on that day. Has nothing to do with anything but showing up. And they count, it's a head count of students in the country. Mm-hmm. And these are schools all over the country. They can have a head count. And if, say, for example, in the school that there are no buses, there are no cars, the parents have to go to school early, some of the kids don't make it to school, so they have 1,000 kids that show up at this school. But at the other school where you have buses, cars, limousines, and they're dropping off the kids, you have 5,000. Do you know they penalize the school system that has a low count of number? It had nothing to do with the number, how they read, write, or arithmetic. Has nothing to do with numbers, the counting of heads. And so you have to realize, we as Americans, Black or white, Jew or Gentile, where we put our money really determines where we believe that we need a difference. Our school systems are suffering. I'm going to say it out loud. There are superintendents, Dr. Whitaker, that are making $500,000 plus, and the students are getting books that are being printed and shared. They're sitting together to read the book. There is a problem there. And so I say, I want to go back and say, this is not just a school system problem. This is a community problem. This is a government problem. This is a church problem. And this is the parents of the children need to recognize what is happening in their schools. I come from a school where reading started at home. You and I, all of us know, and anybody who's listening and seeing, think back. Your grandmother or your grandfather may not have been able to read. Mm-hmm. Think about it. But they had you read the Bible to them. And they never told you. Some of our family members went to their grave and we didn't even know they could not read. We didn't know that. But they were hardworking, consistent
and they
people.
Insisted that you read, and they insisted that the teachers
teach
you to read.
They insisted that education was a priority.
That's right.
In the family. And they had books. If they didn't have books, they found the books. And I go to the Bible because that's the book they had.
Absolutely.
So you would read from the Bible to people who didn't even have a chance to learn how to read. They were discriminated against. They were beaten up because they were not able to read. Great grandparents insisted that we learn to read. So it's not just a school system problem. It's
No,
a
you're right.
community.
But you know what? Look, let me tell you. Someone just asked about Linda McMahon and what Dr. Whitaker, because I know you are running today. They said, what is her background? This comes from Education Week, the Secretary of Education. She grew up in New Bern, North Carolina. She attended East Carolina University and studied to become a French teacher, but never taught.
Mm.
Instead, she co founded and led the World Wrestling Entertainment with her husband. In 2009, she was appointed to the Connecticut Board of Education. She resigned a year later to begin her first of two unsuccessful campaigns to represent Connecticut in the U.S. Senate. She previously led the Small Business Administration during President Donald Trump's first term from 2017 to 2019. She stepped down from the SBA to lead the America First Action PAC in support of President Trump's 2020 election campaign. She serves on the board of Sacred Heart University, which is a Catholic university in Connecticut. That's it. Now, mind you, um, Secretary DeVos had failing charter schools in Michigan. Remember that, Dr. Whitaker?
Mm-hmm.
Just, the thing is, when when we want to go to war, we do it. We don't even let Congress vote on it, which is illegal. But somehow or another, we got to beg for crumbs. And you make the teachers' unions look like they are just greedy. They're being paid too much. First of all, how crazy is this? These people your child spends more time, more of their wake time with their teachers than anybody. You need to pay them a lot of money and their assistants. You need to pay top dollars to the people who fix the lunch, the janitorial service, the janitors. You need to pay them a lot of money because if you don't have a clean classroom, if you don't have a clean school, you got a problem. Our priorities are
Let
off,
me say
Dr.
that.
Whitaker.
Let me say this really quick. I'm glad you
Okay.
mentioned that. And we want to talk about, because everyone in the school, from the janitor to the principal, is responsible for everybody in that classroom.
Yes.
Do you know this is a fact? This is a fact. All over the country, every teacher can tell you that they probably have spent at least $400 or $500 in a year if they are a regular homeroom classroom teacher. $500 of their own personal
Mm-hmm.
money to augment what is happening in a school system. The teachers and they're paying substitute teachers just $10 an hour to teach them our
That's
students how to
ridiculous.
read, to be great and civic leaders. Talking about leadership, and they're paying the teachers $10 and then want to have them bring, this is true, their own paper towels, crayons,
Toilet
pens,
tissue.
pencils, and toilet paper.
It's crazy.
Dr. Whittaker, is that about right?
Dr. Whitaker,
I've
please
heard
go
it.
because I know
I've
you only
heard
have
it.
about 10 minutes left, but I
Yes.
want you to take whatever time you've got because
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
When.
between what Livonia Perryman has said, who's been an educator in the schools, I should have known you'd been an
Mm-hmm.
educator just because of
Mm-hmm.
your disposition. Because I've known Livonia Perryman a long time, and
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Whitaker. I mean, really, what is this? Because it's like the system isn't collapsing; it's being collapsed.
But I think we should, be clear about who we're talking about in terms of performance, in
Hmm.
terms of indicating essentially who we're referring to as illiterate, essentially. The thing that strikes me the most is that we know what communities they live in, those students. We know what towns. We know they're living in towns where you drive through the community, you see a house, then you see 13 of them boarded, and then you see another house, you might see 9 boarded. I remember going through some of the poorest communities in our nation's schools in the summertime and not seeing a child outside for an entire summer. Not one child riding a bicycle outside for an entire summer because it was so dangerous to live in their community. And so on top of that, when they're Families aren't being serviced when they don't have access, to the services that they need, what we call in education wraparound services, access to psychologists, access to food, etc. And then they come to school not ready to learn kindergarten. That's a problem. And Santita always appreciates it when I share that I have worked in the most affluent school district, or one of the most affluent school districts in our
Yeah.
state, and as well as one of the poorest school districts in our state. When I worked in the poorest school districts in our state, I had kids whose name literally was Sam and Pam and could not recognize the three letters in their name,
Mm.
much less the alphabet at kindergarten. I'm not giving a stereotype. I'm saying what I observed. And then being in more fluent systems where they have access to enrichment opportunities in the summer that their parents can write a check for. Same grade level, kids come into school already reading. And so I think it's important to start the conversation from what does it look like when you compare, again, students who are in systems or communities where they have limited access to the experiences or the financial resources they need to build their literacy skills and capabilities before they even get through the door in comparison to their peers. And so when we get those students to school, I say all the time to the staff, we actually not only have to increase their literacy levels, we have to accelerate it, which is also that's a totally different skill set for a classroom teacher in terms of training, right? It's one thing to teach a child how to read, it's another level of skill sets, I repeat, to be able to accelerate their reading. Because
Mhm.
when you talk about the difference, Reverend always talks about, when leveling the playing field. When you talk
Mhm.
about the difference between, I'm going back to kindergarten, a kindergarten or a pre-K student starting out with limited experiences versus a student coming to school with a ton of experiences. When they get in that classroom, the leveling the playing field, that didn't happen. But we're still held accountable for producing the same types of results in the same amount of time with less money. That
You
becomes a
know,
problem.
well, intention guides everything.
Hmm.
And it's very clear to me, America was built on enslaved people, built by enslaved people, and on
Hmm.
stolen land. And we haven't figured out how not to rob people and get things and people for cheap. So it's like we're building into the system. We built into the system a permanent underclass.
Of course,
Yes.
the
It's
caste
always it's
system.
always
Yeah.
it's always been black, but it's more than that now.
Mhm.
And guess what? If I
Racism
may
is.
suggest, they
Mhm.
penalize. They penalize. Hope they penalize those people who have been regulated or degraded or have not reached the level that they should have reached at the third grade or at the seventh grade, and they get penalized in the
Mhm.
school system. They really do. And so the teachers or the system will say, well, those children need to be in a special place or special program when they should have
Yeah.
been part of the full school body to teach them how to read, period.
So
They
let me
should be a
say
part.
this. Let me say
Yes,
this, and this is controversial. Uh, that's why I have a
Oh.
problem with holding students back.
yes.
Mhm.
I would always say, hold them back and do what? Put them back to the same system in which they initially failed? To
Mm.
Mhm.
hold a student back and not restructure entirely what the academic experience was like for that student makes
Mhm.
absolutely no sense to me at all. I'm just saying. That's a Sonia Whitakerism.
That's
I just
true.
really struggle with that. Yeah.
No, 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 no. To me, you've got to put this out there
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
look, they're
That's a
they're
problem.
about to eliminate the Department of Education,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to find out from you, Dr. Whitaker, before you go,
Mm-hmm.
what that's going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And as because now, look, we have an opportunity, as dire as things are, to create something anew. I'm going to see the glass as being half full. Now the question is, does education really matter to you? I mean, all forms of education,
Mhm.
artistic education, academic education, vocational education. What matters to you? What are our priorities? Do we want to bake some bread or build some bombs?
Hmm.
Do we want to create offense so we need more defense? Or are we going to create a society where people can come to America and get well? I mean, we got some. So let's stick with education right now, Dr. Whitaker. I mean, because we are looking at someone, the Secretary of Education. I mean, the president has said offhandedly, he said, "Well, when your job is, I know your job is to take apart, is to eliminate the department that you are oversee, that you're heading." What are we going to do without a Department of Education, and where do we go from here? Because I'm conscious of the time
Yeah.
that you have left with us.
Hmm.
Because
I
I mean,
think,
to me, there's all of that's connected.
yeah, I would say the first thing, without the Department of Education doing what they're supposed to do, in part, is to distribute the federal funds that we need to educate our children. Without them being in place, even today, I had mentioned on your previous show that in the state of Illinois, and probably in most states across the country, by now the federal government would have notified us, as to how much we're going to receive in our budget specific to our title funds. Without the U.S. Department of Education doing that today, it's a problem. Now, the U.S. Department of I'm about to make another connection. In part, our President Trump is saying that the states can handle it. So he's saying he's suggesting that he's doing us a favor by eliminating the U.S. Department of Education and then channeling those resources to state boards of education to make decisions about how those financial resources are going to be distributed. But the reality is, he's not distributed the financial resources. That's a problem today. Where do we go from here? I would suggest that parents and community members expect, believe they have the right to expect from me and other school district officials to be accountable for having conversations with them about how we are going to educate their children given the shortfall. You heard it right here on the Santita Jackson show. Not just how is my child doing in school, because that matters. We are near the end of the school year, and as I've mentioned time and time again, some school districts are at jeopardy of not providing the summer
Hmm.
school programs where the students get breakfast, lunch, and dinner and the like. If I am a parent or a guardian, grandmother, etc., right now, I want to know. I'm told that the federal funds aren't there. Are you still going to provide these services to my son, my daughter, and my grandchild? And if not, where can I go to get the support that I need for them in terms of academics, the academic experience they need over the summer so that they don't fall further behind in their studies? I think that community members have a right to ask those questions of school district officials, and we should be prepared to answer.
So I mean, what do you? Because now it's hard to believe we are in the first. We've just ended the first week of May.
I
So
know.
these kids will be out of school in 4 or 5 weeks.
Correct.
Hmm.
What are we supposed to do? And this is happening while these congressmen and women are having town hall meetings.
Hmm.
Should we
Hmm.
not be asking them, okay, does what about the budget for the school? How are our kids going to eat this summer?
Well, and I'm telling you, Santita and your listening audience, I've always struggled with the fact that addressing education is always the last on the agenda.
Why?
Even when we go through, I think I finally have a theory on that. Let me just back up and say, even during the presidential debates, we covered all the bases, and then there was education. And so recently, it dawned on me. I'll tell you, it was actually on your brother, on Congressman Jackson, and I should tell him this on Congress. during one of Congressman Jackson's town halls, the light bulb went out for me when one of the community members said that they were worried about getting groceries and they were worried about keeping the lights on. Being educated was actually not at the forefront of their thinking
Absolutely not.
because they were thinking about the basics, Santita. And I need some more time to let that resonate in my spirit, but it was like
Mhm.
a thing, for the lack of a better term.
Mhm. And you know what? And it's not that they
Mm,
don't care about education, because whenever I do these shows on education,
mm-hmm,
the phone calls, and we'll be moving into a place where everybody will be getting phone calls very
mm-hmm,
soon. The
mm-hmm,
phones would light up. People want their children to be educated. Period.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That is the desire. But there's some folks don't want our children to be educated. I think we just have to be honest about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I think that lends itself when we go to the ban on books.
Yeah.
People know that if blacks and Hispanic Americans and the like, if we really leaned into what we know about the resiliency that existed in our people hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and the contributions that we have made to this society, then people know that that will ultimately result in black and brown children believing they could achieve. And so to combat that, so to as to increase the likelihood that that does not happen, the strategic move to make sure that we don't have books that reflect rich history and culture, that's deliberate.
And also, children who are hungry, it is hard to teach. It is very hard when you're hungry or you're looking for groceries or you're
Yeah.
looking for that next meal or you're looking for that ride home and you have already cut the budget and you're not able. We're not just talking about food, we're talking about transportation. Transportation is going to be cut. That means that some parents cannot even get their kids to the classroom or to the school because buses and other transportation is federalized will be cut. When you cut, it's about money. Trust me on that. When you cut the money, you cut the opportunity for to enhance the
I,
person's lifestyle.
I think you've got someone who's in love with you. Solomon said, "Can you be my teacher, Dr. Whitaker? I love
Mhm.
it
I
when she's
love it.
gone." Uh oh. Solomon,
Wonderful,
oh, he said,
wonderful.
That made my
"Can you
whole
be my
day. I'm
teacher?"
gonna keep going. Listen, that message right there, I'll hold close to me forever. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep fighting. Thank you for that.
Keep
Well,
the
you
fight
know
going.
what? I mean, look, hey, I
So
laugh and I
sweet.
joke, but no, really, I think we've got to, you know, there was when I was in, because I went straight through public school. You used to get your eyes examined every year.
Right?
You
Dental.
take those crazy tablets so you could see how well you did or did not brush your teeth. If you had cavities or not, they sent home a report to your parents. That's when you, and that is truly when America was number one now. And there is a method to all of that. And I'm just saying, because my sister's teaching, she's taught overseas more than once, and she studied a lot overseas because her PhD is in global education policy. And so for her to go to Norway and to turn on the radio, and one station teaches you Spanish, another one teaches you French, another one teaches you um, the Swedish language, Danish language. You're learning.
Mhm.
You're learning. And when countries are advancing, that is what they do. They're teaching people. And when we're sliding back, you're losing when people don't have an education. And I'm not talking about just the academic education. Some people, I promise you before the Lord, I love you, Livonia. I love you, Sonia. But if I have a problem with a leaky roof, I don't want
Right.
you. I really
Right.
don't.
Mhm.
I need
Right.
someone who
Right.
understands the structure of a house. We had
Right.
Dunbar Vocational School here in Chicago. And what was so exciting, we took algebra there as eighth graders. It was very exciting. They chose some of us in our classroom so we could get there and take it a year before we got to high school. And what was so wonderful was every day you, in the middle of the school, you saw a house, a full house that the students had built.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, I could not wait until one day I was able to go in. It was so exciting to me that someone just a year or so older than me, that someone was going in and they were building a house and the water worked and you saw the tub, you saw the shower. Oh, it was so exciting. I was like, the students built this? Really, really, really? We have so many gifts. I mean, I'm just very, very concerned. I mean, and I can't blame these parents who are trying to get some food on the table. I can't
That's right.
blame them.
That's right.
I'm not blaming them. They're trying to survive, and
Right.
we shouldn't reduce people to that. I think that's my ultimate point. We're reducing people. I mean, we're turning people into thieves. I'm not accusing
It's
anybody,
back to
but
you. Right.
but no, but let me just say this. It's easy for you to say what you would not do if you are not hungry.
Hmm.
It's easy for you to say what you would not do
Mm-hmm.
if you
Yeah.
have no place to stay. It's easy
Mm-hmm.
for you to say what you won't do if you can pay your rent or your mortgage. It's easy for you to say that. If you have, I mean, and if you see that dollar bill on the table or that stack of money, it's easy for you to say. It's easy. And most of us are in that space. But we don't have to make those choices. But more and more Americans are having to make those choices, and more people all around the world. They make them every day. It is a horrible thing. My pastor said, I've never seen God make a mouth he couldn't feed. What do you have to say before you go, Dr. Whitaker? Because I know you run into a meeting.
Yeah, I'm going headed into a board meeting. And I just want to say, first of all, thank you to you for keeping this at the forefront of our thinking. We know that if people are hungry, it's hard to think about other things, but we have to make sure that we are educated. And the best way to do that is to make sure that we continue to inform our people, the nation, the world about what our needs are so that we can continue to make it a priority. I also want to thank you
Uh-oh, hold on.
related to the
You just
need
went right
to,
back out. Dr.
can you hear me?
Whitaker? Okay, now I can.
Can you hear me?
Now we can. Now
Also,
you just
I want to thank you for I was going to say, I also want to thank you for challenging me in terms of the need to seriously consider next level as it relates to impacting policy. Thank you. I
well, it's
appreciate
not
that.
even a challenge. I just know that you need to be at the table, and more than that, we need you at the table.
That's right.
I understand.
I need people who are going to stand up for the least of these at the table. We all need that. We need advocates at the table. I'm not going to impugn the motives of Linda McMahon. I'm not. I'd rather have a conversation with her or try to impact her in a way that she can positively help our children. I don't
Mhm.
believe in beating people down. I don't want to do that. And my father and mother taught me not to do that. Let me just start at number one. Start with a pleasant hello, and let's see if we can have a point or two, at least, of agreement, and let's move on from there.
Uh,
Because you'd be surprised at where you might be able to get some of your help. We love you, Dr. Whitaker. Go on and roll into
Love
that
you
meeting.
too. Thank you. I'll see you soon. Thank you
Absolutely,
so
because
much.
remember we've got a little tea to organize for our girls, for our
Yes, we
ladies.
do. Yes, we
Right.
do.
That's
Good to
right.
see
Inspired
you,
by
Miss
Livonia here.
Perryman.
Love
All
you.
right. Mwah.
Take care. Right.
We've got about 2 or 3 minutes left here. What I mean, your space, you are a brilliant broadcaster, um, on television and radio. You have messaged for so many campaigns. Help us to build a message here. because we've got some children to save, and I don't have now 3.5 years to wait for some change to come. I got to work with the hand I've been dealt. I've
And
got I've
you
got
know,
I've got
right,
I've got an administration that wants to end the Department
right.
of Education. What can we
And
do?
the thing about it, believe it or not, is closer to home than we ever think. I want to go back to Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr. We need to build an even playing field. That's number one. And how do you do that? We moms and dads, grandmothers and grandfathers, aunts and uncles support the Dr. Whitakers in terms of having and insisting that she and other people like her and like-minded like her are at the table to impact policy or to write policy, to execute policy, to make sure that the funds that are needed for the individuals in our community, be they black, brown, or white, that they are being served in the school system with appropriate funds that are needed to have a decent education. Even playing field, right here, that is a community conversation. That is a clarion call for everybody to be involved in the future of education for all of the children. Because if there is one group of children or students who are not educated, they suffer and penalize. And then those who have to pull up on their bootstraps, they're always struggling, and then they are penalized as adults.
Mm.
That's what happens. And then we have a situation where we end up with another class of people who are not able to really maybe take care of themselves, or they need to be taken care of by others. But can you imagine Dr. Whitaker at the table? Can you imagine that the mothers and fathers of the children that are influenced by her are there to say, we got your back, and that we need the dollars and cents, and we're
Mhm.
going to make sure that we're not going to go away until you are supported to get the funds, the necessary books, and etc. in our classrooms. It comes down to a unified group of
Mhm.
individuals, regardless of race, creed, and or color.
And you know what? And pay everybody. I
Yes,
think that Dr. Whitaker should make $1 million a year. I think teachers should start at 100, 150, 200. You can't do anything if you can't read, if you cannot figure out mathematics,
right.
if you can't analyze, if someone doesn't correct your bad behavior, if someone does not clean the school properly, if someone doesn't know how to fix your child's food, they shouldn't be making 25, 30, 40, $50, $50,000 a year. They should be making much more than that. Double it, triple it. If you care about these children and if you respect these workers.
And then embrace the other parts of education. You mentioned music, and you mentioned other.
All of it.
But guess what? Music, the lyrics of music is poetry. Just imagine, it's poetry. And our children, believe it or not, if you went on the block today, they're reading and singing poetry. Can you
Always.
imagine that? Rolling that back into the school system.
But I mean, and athletics, learning
Yes.
how to play, learning how
Discipline.
to play, the discipline. Most of us don't want to
Yes.
take a flight of stairs.
Yes.
No, 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 no,
Discipline.
no. Wait a minute. Michael Jordan learned a whole lot by not making the varsity team his freshman
Yes.
year.
Yes.
Wait, wait,
Yes.
wait. There's so many lessons, so many life lessons there. Everybody, every aspect of education matters.
Matters.
And
Right.
your teacher, I talked about Miss Irene B. Smith, may she rest in eternal peace. My first grade teacher. Oh, I thank God for her every day. She gave me the gift of reading. I
Yes.
could read when I got to school, but I mean, she just made it flower. Thank
Yes.
God for my mother. My parents had no money when they married. I was born, when I was born, oh, Livonia, we lived with family friends, and my name
Yes.
was rent money. They said,
Mm-hmm.
well, if it's a girl, may we help? And Miss Halsey said, my godmother, could I help
Mm-hmm.
name her? Mother said, sure. Right. My parents had no place to stay. They had no money.
Mm-hmm.
But I thank God
Yeah.
that my mother, with no money, but she was on the campus of the University of Chicago. She put me, Jesse, and Johnny, because we were born in 2.5 years.
Isn't that something?
And she would take us to the museum. all around the campus,
Same
Museum
here.
of Science and Industry, and we'd ride through on the strollers. We didn't at 2 and 3 and a newborn, and 3 and 3 and 2 and 1, and 4 and 3 and 2, because Jesse, Johnny, and I are stair step kids. Eventually, we knew what we were looking at. But
And
our
get
mother
and just think
wanted
about
us to
right,
read.
right, and read. Just think about it as we close that in many of the homes, if they save their money, many homes save their
Mhm.
money to buy the
The
encyclopedias.
Encyclopedia Britannica.
You
My
got
mother
it?
did that.
Yes.
She did that,
That's
and
right.
we would sit,
No,
and we
just
would
think
sit,
about that. They saved their last dollar
and
for the
you
encyclopedia.
need that. You don't just need to get your to go on this and get. There's something about the discipline of going to the library. There's something about sitting down with the
Yeah,
book and finding the information.
right.
We've made some advances, but with every advance, we've taken several steps backwards. Everybody, think about
Yeah.
that. Think about it, Solomon. I'm sending you so much love. I know I'm gonna tell her that you. Oh, bless your heart, some sharing deep wisdom. You know what? I tell you what. Livonia and I are Livonia sharing things with you. She's had a lifetime of experiences. What I'm just trying to say is, you know, we need to have a civilization. Gore Vidal said his disappointment in America was that we had a chance to achieve civilization, but we chose empire, chose to create empire. You achieve civilization. The Chinese have not worried about us with this trade war because they said, hey, we've been around 5,000 years. We got a
Mhm.
civilization. Iran, Iraq, y'all can say whatever you want. They have civilizations. Even though we have tried to destroy their artifacts and steal the rest. America, everybody, we have to figure out how we can achieve, which means you got to climb and build and be bigger. Civilization, which means
Build
no
a
child,
even
no
right.
person is left
Yes.
behind. The union has to be more perfect. It has to become perfect.
Build
Everybody.
a even playing field where the rules are the same and the goals and opportunities
That's right.
and right
For
are
everybody.
open to everybody.
Cutting. I'm cutting. I love you, Livonia.
My pleasure
Carrying on
always.
brilliant art. Well, I love you and I love everybody here. I love all of you. You know I do. And thank you for being with us. We appreciate you. We'll see you soon. You know, we're going to talk about the Diddy case. Not next, but tomorrow.
Thank you so
That's
very
right.
much for having me. My pleasure always.
Oh,
Good night,
get out of
everyone.
here. You got home here. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Love y'all.